The night was endless and cruel. The frozen wind screamed across the white land like knives in the air. Snowflakes did not fall gently here. They came sharp and heavy, cutting skin and freezing breath. The world had become a grave of ice, where even shadows seemed brittle and ready to break. A small alien girl struggled through the storm, her tiny legs shaking, her skin a pale shade of blue under the dim moons. She was not alone, her mother was with her. But her mother was weak. Almost broken by the cold, the woman stumbled, leaning against her daughter, her eyes half closed as if sleep wanted to steal her away forever. The child clutched her mother's frozen hand, pulling with all her strength, whispering through the storm, "Please, stay awake, please don't leave me. Mama." Her voice was lost in the wind, but her heart screamed louder. She had no food, no fire, no home anymore. Hunters had driven them out of their village. Soldiers had burned what little they had. Now all that remained was this long walk into the storm, with nothing but fear and hope. The girl's bare feet bled inside broken shoes. Yet she did not stop. She saw something in the distance, a faint light flickering against the wall of night. It was small, like a candle in the endless dark, but it was hope. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. She shook her mother, whispering, "Look, Mama, a light. Someone is there. We can be safe." Her mother barely moved, her lips blue, her chest shallow. The girl pressed her forehead against her mother's arm, tears freezing on her skin. She had no choice. She had to carry her mother forward. Step by step, she dragged her, pushed her, begged her. Even when her own legs screamed with pain, the light grew stronger, shaping into a cabin hidden against the rocks. Smoke rose weakly from a chimney, glowing red behind frost-covered glass. The child's heart leapt. Someone lived here. Maybe someone kind, but fear gnawed at her too. What if it was a trap? What if they hated her kind? Still, she had no other path. The cold was already killing her mother. She reached the door and pounded with her small fists. Her voice cracked, broken by the storm. "Please, please open. My mom is dying. Please help us. Please, human." Her words were desperate. They were not a request. They were the last scream of a heart ready to break. She hit the door again and again, blood mixing with ice on her knuckles. Her mother fell behind her into the snow, silent still, her body shaking with the last bits of life. The girl spun around, grabbing her mother's arms. Pulling her close, her cries grew wild. She did not care if enemies heard. She did not care if the storm swallowed her. She pressed her small body over her mother's chest, trying to give her warmth, trying to fight death itself. "Please, Mama, don't go. Please don't leave me alone," she whispered again and again. But the cold had no mercy, and silence spread deeper with every second. Inside the cabin, footsteps moved. The door unlocked with a heavy click. A tall figure appeared in the light, a human wrapped in thick furs. His face shadowed, his eyes sharp and tired. For a long breath, he said nothing, only stared at the alien child holding her dying mother in the snow. The girl lifted her head, her tear-filled eyes locking onto his. Her lips trembled, her voice cracked as she cried, "Please, human, save my mother before the cold kills her." The storm roared louder, as if the world itself waited for his answer. The girl's words hung in the night, fragile yet burning, and in that frozen silence, the human had to choose, turn them away, or open his fire to strangers. The story of survival had only begun. The human stood frozen at the doorway, the storm pushing snow into the cabin as the door hung open. He saw the little alien girl clutching her mother like a shield, her tiny body bent against the cold, her voice breaking as she begged, for a moment. His soldier's instincts screamed inside him. He was trained to follow orders, and the orders were clear. No alien refugees, no exceptions. The war had turned mercy into weakness, and weakness into death. He had seen men executed for less, but his eyes lingered on the girl's trembling lips, on her bloodied hands from knocking at his door. Her mother's skin was pale, covered in frost, her chest rising and falling so weakly it was almost invisible. The soldier's heart tightened against his own will. He remembered battlefields where comrades had begged for help, where eyes had gone dark while waiting for someone who never came. Something in him could not turn away. "Not this time, inside now," he muttered. His voice sharp but low, he stepped forward, lifting the alien woman into his arms with surprising strength. The child gasped in relief and stumbled after him, her small feet dragging across the wooden floor. The human kicked the door shut, sealing the storm outside. Instantly, the warmth of the fire wrapped around them, though it felt too small to fight the death clinging to the mother's body. He laid the alien woman down on a rough bed of furs near the hearth. Her body was stiff and cold, her breath shallow, her lips almost gray. The soldier quickly grabbed blankets, throwing them over her, then shoved another log into the fire until sparks leapt high. He looked at the girl who knelt beside her mother, holding her frozen hand, her wide eyes staring up at him. "Will she live?" she whispered, the words tiny but heavy with fear. The human frowned, kneeling beside the mother. He pressed 2 fingers against her neck. Searching for life, a weak pulse throbbed slowly, fragile as candlelight in the wind. "She's not gone yet," he muttered, pulling out a small metal box from the shelf. Inside were old supplies, dried herbs, a flask of strong spirits, and a small vial of medical stimulant left from his army days. He hesitated, staring at the vial. If he used it now, it meant nothing left for himself later. But the girl's tearful eyes burned into him, breaking down the wall of hesitation. He injected the liquid into the mother's arm, his hand steady, though his chest felt heavy. Moments passed in silence, the fire crackling louder than their breaths. Then slowly the mother coughed, her chest rising a little stronger, her lips parting with a faint groan. The girl gasped with joy, clutching her mother tighter, her face glowing with hope even in the dim light. "Thank you, human, thank you," she cried, her voice breaking with both relief and exhaustion. The soldier leaned back, exhaling slowly. He told himself he had only delayed the inevitable, that she was still weak and might not survive, but deep down, he felt something stir, a warmth he had buried long ago. It was dangerous, he knew, dangerous to care, dangerous to break orders, yet here they were, 2 fragile lives inside his cabin depending on him, and he could not push them back into the storm suddenly. The child flinched and looked toward the window. Through the crack in the frosted glass, faint red lights moved across the snowy horizon. The soldier stiffened, recognizing the glow instantly. Drones, human patrol drones, sweeping the land for signs of fugitives. His heart sank, the timing was cruel, almost mocking. He knew if they scanned this cabin, they would detect the heat of 3 bodies instead of 1. The girl looked at him, her lips trembling again. "They will take us, won't they?" she whispered. The human's jaw tightened, his mind racing with choices. He could hand them over and walk away free, or he could defy everything he swore to follow. The mother stirred weakly under the blankets, whispering in a broken voice, her alien tongue soft but pleading. The girl translated quickly. "She says, 'Please don't let them take me away from you.'" The soldier cursed under his breath. Pacing the cabin, every instinct told him to shut them out, to survive alone. But every glance at the child's desperate face cut deeper. The sound of the drones grew louder, their red eyes blinking through the storm. Closer with every second, the girl pressed against her mother, holding her like a shield, tears running again. The soldier stood at the center of the cabin, torn between duty and something stronger. His hand gripped the rifle, leaning against the wall, his other hand tightening into a fist. And as the shadows of the patrol crept near, his voice came out low but firm. "No one is taking them. Not tonight." The fire cracked louder, the storm raged outside, and the first heavy knock shook the door. "Open up, inspection," a voice barked from beyond. The girl gasped, her heart pounding. The human soldier raised his weapon, his eyes dark but steady. The war outside had just stepped into his home, and the choice he made would change everything. The door rattled again, harder this time. Snow shaking from the frame, the soldier stood firm, his weapon tight in his hands, the fire crackling behind him. The little alien girl held her mother closer, her wide eyes fixed on the door, every knock striking her heart like thunder. Her mother stirred weakly, whispering something in her broken tongue, but her words were drowned by the storm outside. "Inspection open now or we break it," the voice barked again. Sharp and merciless, the soldier's pulse raced. He had lived through years of orders, commands, raids. He knew the tone of men who would not wait. He glanced at the window. Red drone lights swept across the snow, searching, hunting. If they saw the heat of 3 bodies inside, everything would be over. His breath came slow and heavy. He knew what he had to do, but even he was not sure if it would work. He turned toward the girl, his voice low but steady. "Do not speak, do not move, keep your mother still." She nodded quickly, tears already streaming down her cheeks, her hands clutching the blanket around her mother's frail body. The soldier yanked the bed toward the farthest corner, shoving it against the wall, piling old crates and furs over them to hide the shape of bodies. The firelight dimmed as he threw a heavy cloak across the flames. leaving only embers glowing faintly. Darkness spread in the cabin, broken only by the storm's pale light leaking through the cracks. The knock became a pounding, the wood groaning with a grunt. The soldier pulled the door open, his rifle slung casually over his shoulder, his eyes cold and empty like a man with nothing to hide. Snow gusted inside, stinging his skin. 3 human patrol soldiers stood outside, helmets glowing faint red under the drone's light. Rifles across their chests, their leader stepped forward, his voice dripping with suspicion. "Report Outpost 7. Confirm no alien movement here?" The soldier shrugged, leaning against the doorframe, his tone flat. "No movement, no survivors out there. Only snow and bones." The patrol leader narrowed his eyes, scanning the room behind him. "Heat readings show more than one body," the officer growled, his hand tightening on his weapon. The soldier forced a laugh, short and bitter. "Maybe the scanners are broken again. Maybe it's the fire. Maybe it's the rats in the walls." His voice was calm, but inside his chest burned. His finger twitched with every second of danger. The drones buzzed closer, their red beams crawling over the wooden walls. The girl's breath caught under the blankets, muffled as she pressed her face into her mother's chest. The mother stirred, almost groaning, but the girl covered her mouth gently. Whispering prayers into the silence, the patrol leader stepped forward, suspicion still sharp in his eyes. "We search," he said coldly, and moved to push past the soldier. The soldier's hand shot up, blocking the doorway, his eyes hard as steel. "You don't search here," he said firmly. "Orders say my cabin is not to be touched. I hold the line, I guard the pass, I report when needed. You think command will like you wasting time tearing down my walls while the storm eats your men alive?" The patrol leader hesitated, his breath visible in the freezing air. The drones whirred closer, their sensors clicking, but the storm made readings weak and broken. The soldier pressed harder, leaning close, his voice like stone. "If you want to question me, you take it to command. But you won't step one boot inside." Tension stretched like a blade. Silence heavy, the girl's heart pounded in her tiny chest, her small hands gripping her mother's cold fingers tighter. She prayed the human soldier's bluff would hold, prayed the patrol would leave, finally. The officer cursed under his breath, waving to his men. "Fine, but we'll be watching," he spat, turning back into the snow. The patrol disappeared into the storm, the drones drifting after them like red ghosts until their lights vanished into the white. The soldier closed the door slowly, pressing his back against it. His breath came hard, his arms heavy, but his eyes stayed sharp. He knew they were not safe, not for long. The patrol would return. The drones would sweep again. The girl crawled out from the pile of furs, rushing to her mother's side, clutching her hand, whispering relief. The soldier moved back to the fire, uncovering the flames, letting warmth fill the room again. For a long time, none of them spoke. Only the crackle of fire and the howl of the storm outside. Finally, the soldier broke the silence, his voice low. "They will come back, and when they do, this place will not be enough." The girl looked up at him, fear mixing with hope. "Where will we go?" she asked softly. He stared into the flames, his face set in shadow. "Somewhere they cannot find you, somewhere beyond their patrol lines." The girl held her mother close, her small body shaking but her voice brave. "Please, human, take us there. Save her." The soldier's jaw tightened, his mind heavy with the weight of choice. He had sworn to follow orders, to guard his post, but tonight he had already broken those chains. The firelight glowed against his eyes, and in the silence, a decision burned brighter than the storm outside. He whispered to himself, almost too soft to hear, "Then we run." The storm raged through the night, but inside the cabin the fire was still alive. The soldier did not rest, his mind too heavy, his eyes fixed on the map spread across the table. Lines of frozen rivers, canyons, and abandoned outposts stretched across the paper. He knew every path, every danger, every place where patrols could be waiting. And he also knew there was only one way to keep the mother and child alive: escape. The little alien girl sat beside her mother, holding her hand as if she could keep her soul tethered to the world. Her eyes were wide with both fear and hope, watching the human soldier as if he was the only fire in the dark. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but grim. "At dawn, we move." The girl swallowed, her lips trembling. "But the soldiers, the drones, they will see us." He looked at her, his gaze sharp but not unkind. "Then we stay ahead of them, or we don't survive." The mother stirred weakly, opening her tired eyes for the first time with a faint whisper. Her voice was fragile, but the girl bent close. Translating in a shaky tone, she says, "Thank you For saving us, the soldier did not answer. Instead, he gathered supplies, dried meat, water skins, a med kit, and extra blankets. Each item weighed heavy. But he knew survival would demand more than strength. It would demand silence, speed, and luck. Morning came pale and cruel, the storm easing only enough to reveal a world of endless white. The soldier wrapped the mother in thick furs, lifting her onto a crude sled made from broken wood and rope. The girl clutched her side, walking close as the human pulled the sled through the snow. Their breaths came out as clouds, their footsteps buried quickly under the biting wind. The cabin vanished behind them, swallowed by the storm as if it had never been. Hours passed, the path cutting through sharp ridges and hollow valleys. The soldier's strength kept them moving, though every step dragged his body closer to exhaustion. The girl stumbled often, her hands raw from cold. But she never complained. Each time she fell, she pushed herself up again. Always keeping her mother in sight, the soldier noticed, though he did not speak, and deep inside a strange respect grew for her stubborn courage. But silence did not last far behind them. Faint echoes carried through the storm, the low hum of engines, the distant buzz of drones. The soldier cursed under his breath, tightening his grip on the rope of the sled. "They are tracking us," he muttered, his eyes scanning the horizon for cover. The girl's face paled, her small voice trembling. "They will take her, won't they?" He shook his head, his jaw hard. "Not if I can stop them." They pushed onward into a canyon where jagged rocks rose high on both sides. The walls shielded them from the wind, but also trapped them in a narrow path. The soldier's instinct screamed that it was risky, too easy to corner prey here still. It was the fastest route, and time was their enemy. He led them forward, his weapon slung tight, his eyes never resting. The girl suddenly tugged on his sleeve. Pointing upward, high above the canyon wall, a faint red glow flickered, moving slowly through the haze. A drone, scanning, watching. The soldier yanked her close. Pressing a finger to his lips, they froze in the shadows. The only sound the shallow breaths of the mother on the sled. Minutes stretched like hours until the glow faded, drifting away into the storm. Only then did they move again by nightfall. The canyon widened into a broken plain. Ruins of old towers jutted from the snow, relics of battles long forgotten. The soldier guided them into one of the hollow shells, setting down the sled inside the cracked stone. The girl collapsed beside her mother, exhaustion pulling at her small frame. The soldier kept watch at the doorway, rifle ready, his eyes scanning the endless white for movement. In the silence of the ruins, the girl whispered softly, almost to herself, "Why do you help us, human, when others hunt us?" He looked at her for a long moment, his voice low. "Because once I needed help too, and no one came." Her eyes glistened, her small hands tightening around her mother's. The soldier turned back toward the storm, the weight of memory heavy on his shoulders, then faint but clear. A sound cut through the wind, the crunch of footsteps in snow. The soldier stiffened, his grip on the rifle tightening. The girl's eyes widened in fear, her body curling protectively over her mother. Voices echoed in the distance, harsh and sharp, the language of hunters. The patrol had found their trail and they were closing fast. The soldier's face hardened, his voice low but firm. "We move again. Now." The girl nodded quickly, her fear swallowed by determination. The mother moaned softly as they lifted the sled once more, her body weak but alive, and together, under the cover of night, they slipped from the ruins, their footsteps vanishing into the storm. The chase had begun, and the frozen world gave no mercy. But neither did the human who had chosen to fight it. The night dragged on as the storm swallowed their tracks. The human soldier pulled the sled with iron will, his muscles burning, every step heavier than the last. The little alien girl walked close, holding onto her mother's hand beneath the furs, whispering soft words to keep her alive. The mother's breaths were shallow, her face pale, her body fragile, but still, she clung to life. The soldier's eyes scanned the horizon, his instincts sharp. He had survived too many hunts to ignore the feeling crawling along his spine. They were being followed. The hunters were patient, waiting for the right moment. The storm gave them cover, but it also hid the enemy. Every shadow in the snow looked like a figure. Every sound in the wind felt like footsteps. By dawn, they reached the edge of a frozen river, wide and cruel, its surface cracked like glass. The soldier crouched, testing the ice with his gloved hand. It groaned beneath the weight, dangerous but passable if they moved fast. "We cross here," he said firmly, his voice leaving no room for doubt. The girl looked at the endless white stretching across the river and swallowed hard. But she nodded. He stepped first, dragging the sled behind him, each footstep sending faint cracks across the surface. The girl followed close, her eyes wide, clutching her mother's arm as if her presence could anchor her. Halfway across, the sound came, a low howl of engines cutting through the storm. The soldier froze, lifting his gaze, and saw dark shapes breaking through the snow on the far ridge. Sleds with engines, patrol hunters, their red lights glowing like blood in the mist. "Run!" he snapped, pulling harder on the rope. The sled sliding faster across the ice. The girl stumbled after him, her legs weak but driven by fear. Behind them, the hunters shouted, their engines roaring louder as they closed the distance. Bullets cracked across the ice, shards exploding upward, spraying frozen dust into the air. The girl screamed but kept moving, holding her mother close as the sled jolted forward. The soldier turned, firing quick burst from his rifle. 2 hunters dropped, their sleds spinning out of control, smashing against the ice, but more came, their shouts echoing like wolves in the storm. The soldier's eyes scanned the river. Desperate for a path ahead, jagged rocks rose from the ice, sharp teeth of stone breaking the surface. "This way," he growled, dragging the sled toward the rocks. Using them for cover, bullets slammed into the ice, cracking it wider, water hissing beneath. One hunter's sled went too fast, the ice shattered under its weight, pulling it down into the black water. The others slowed, but not enough to stop their chase. The soldier fired again, the crack of his rifle echoing across the frozen expanse. They reached the far bank, scrambling up the ridge, snow clinging to their boots. The girl collapsed to her knees, sobbing with exhaustion, but the soldier grabbed her arm, pulling her back up. "Not yet," he muttered. "We move until they cannot see us." The girl wiped her frozen tears, clutching her mother tighter, nodding with fierce determination. Together they pushed onward into the cover of the cliffs. The storm swallowing them once again, hours passed, the echoes of engines fading behind them. The soldier led them into a narrow cave hidden beneath jagged stone. Inside, the air was heavy but still warmer than the storm outside. He set the sled down, his hands shaking with fatigue, his chest heaving with every breath. The girl curled beside her mother, tears streaking her cheeks, whispering, "We are safe. For now." But the soldier's face stayed grim. He knew the hunters would not give up, not after what they had seen. They would track him, hunt him, break him, and anyone who stood in their way. He stared into the cave's shadows, gripping his rifle tight, his mind already planning their next move. "This is only the beginning," he whispered under his breath. The girl's eyes found his, her voice small but steady. "You could leave us, and be safe," she said, her words trembling. The soldier shook his head slowly, his gaze sharp. "Safe means nothing if I walk away from you now." The girl's lips quivered, her eyes shining with tears. "Then please, human, don't stop saving her." Her words struck deeper than any bullet. The soldier looked at the frail mother lying under the firs, and his voice hardened. "I won't." Far outside, the storm began to quiet, leaving only the silence of snow. But in that silence, danger moved, shadows crawling closer with every heartbeat. The escape had bought them time, but the hunt was far from over. And the soldier knew that the next encounter would not be so easy to survive. The cave gave them shelter for only a few hours. The fire the soldier built was small, barely enough to push back the frost clinging to their clothes. The girl sat close to her mother, pressing her small hands against the woman's chest as if she could give warmth through sheer will. The soldier kept watch at the entrance, his rifle steady, his ears sharp. The silence of the storm was more dangerous than its roar, because silence meant the hunters were close. When morning light broke across the frozen cliffs, pale and cruel, the soldier knew they had to move again. He tied the sled tighter, checking the straps twice, his hands stiff with cold but certain. The girl's eyes met his, tired but determined. "She is weaker," she whispered. Glancing at her mother, the soldier crouched down, resting a hand over the firs, feeling the faint rise and fall of shallow breaths. Her life was hanging by a thread, and every hour in the cold cut that thread thinner. They left the cave, the snow crunching under their boots. The wind had eased, but the sky above was heavy with clouds, dim light pressing down like a weight. The soldier pulled the sled as fast as he could, his legs burning, his back screaming. The girl followed, clutching a small bag with the last of their food and water. She stumbled often, but each time she forced herself up again, her eyes never leaving her mother's fragile form. Hours passed before the breaking point came. The mother coughed violently, her body jerking, then went limp. The girl cried out, rushing to her side, her hands shaking her mother desperately. "Mama, please, stay with me." The soldier dropped the rope, kneeling quickly, his hands checking her pulse, her breath, anything. It was there but faint, slipping away, like a candle burning its last. The girl's tears froze against her cheeks, her voice trembling. "She cannot go further. She will die." The soldier stared at the frail woman, then at the endless white stretching before them. His jaw tightened, his mind waging war with itself. If they stopped, the hunters would catch them. If they pushed on, the mother might die on the sled. He looked at the girl, her tiny face filled with desperate faith. "Please carry her," she whispered. Without hesitation, he bent down, lifting the woman into his arms. Her weight pressed heavy, but he bore it. His steps sinking deeper into the snow, the girl hurried close beside him, her small hand gripping his coat as if to help carry the burden. Every step was agony, his muscles screaming, his breath sharp in the freezing air, but he did not stop, because the girl's eyes were locked on him with a kind of trust he had not seen in years. They crossed the ridge and entered a wide valley. The air felt wrong, too still, too quiet, the kind of silence that belonged to death. The soldier froze, his instincts clawing at him. He scanned the horizon and then he saw them, dark figures moving against the white, shadows of soldiers spreading across the valley. It was an ambush. The girl gasped, clutching her mother tighter. The soldier's grip on the woman did not falter, but his free hand swung his rifle forward. The enemy stepped from the storm, armored, weapons raised, their eyes glowing behind masks. The leader's voice rang across the valley, cruel and certain. "Hand over the fugitives, soldier, and walk away alive." The girl's voice cracked as she cried, "No, please." The soldier's eyes burned with fire. He shifted the mother gently back onto the sled, tucking the blankets around her. Then he turned to face the hunters, his rifle steady, his voice cold as stone. "No one touches them," he said, each word sharp like a blade. The hunters laughed, spreading out, their boots crunching closer, rifles aiming. The girl stood frozen, her heart pounding, her tiny hands gripping the edge of the sled. The storm whispered across the valley as the silence broke. The first shot cracked, the soldier dropped to one knee. Returning fire, his rifle roared. Striking one hunter down in the snow, the girl screamed, covering her mother as bullets tore the ice around them. The soldier moved like a wall, unshaken by fear, his every shot precise. But the hunters were many, and each second pushed him closer to the edge. The mother moaned weakly, her voice almost lost. The girl bent low, whispering through tears, "Please stay alive, please. Human will save us." The soldier's breath came heavy, sweat freezing on his brow. He ducked behind a ridge of snow. Reloading quickly, the hunters pressed closer. Confident in their numbers, the valley became fire and thunder, the cold air burning with war. The girl peeked up, her eyes wide with terror but also awe. She had never seen a human fight like this, standing alone against so many. Each time the hunters thought they had him cornered. The valley burned with gunfire, each shot echoing against the cliffs. The soldier moved like a shadow through the storm, his rifle cracking again and again. Every time a hunter stepped closer to the sled, he cut them down, his aim sharp, his body unyielding. But numbers pressed hard against him, and the weight of battle dragged at his chest. Still he refused to fall, because behind him, the girl and her mother waited, clinging to the fragile promise of survival. The girl held her mother tight under the furs, whispering through tears, "Hold on, Mama, please. Human will save us." Her voice was small, but her words carried through the chaos like a prayer. The mother stirred faintly, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came. The soldier heard the girl's cries even through the fire, and it fueled him. He rose higher from cover, his rifle spitting fire, his face fierce and unbroken. The hunters tried to circle him, spreading across the valley like wolves. One rushed forward, blade drawn, but the soldier met him with steel. The clash rang sharp in the cold, the human shoving the blade aside and driving his rifle butt into the enemy's mask. The hunter fell, snow stained with red. Another fired from the ridge, the bullet grazing the soldier's arm, but he did not falter. Pain only hardened his steps, driving him to shield the lives behind him. The girl peeked from the sled, her wide eyes shining with both terror and awe. To her, he no longer looked like a man but something greater, a wall of fire against the endless dark. She pressed her face into her mother's chest, whispering again, "We are not alone anymore. Mama, The storm swirled around them, carrying smoke and frost, mixing war with winter. At last, silence fell. The soldier lowered his weapon, his breath harsh, his arm bleeding, his body heavy with exhaustion around him. The valley was littered with fallen hunters, their shadows swallowed by snow. But he knew more would come. Patrols always came, the hunt never ended. He turned back to the sled, kneeling beside the girl and her mother. The girl threw her arms around him, sobbing with relief. "You saved us, human. You saved us." The soldier closed his eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of her words pierce through the ice of his heart. But he opened them again, sharp and steady. "We are not safe yet. We must keep moving." The girl wiped her tears quickly, nodding with fierce determination. "Then I will walk as far as it takes. Just don't let her die." He lifted the sled rope again, pulling them out of the valley. Each step was agony, but he pushed forward. Guided by something stronger than orders, hours passed as they climbed through ridges and crossed frozen plains. At last, faint warmth touched the air, the storm giving way to mist that rose from hidden vents in the earth. The girl gasped, pointing ahead. "Look, heat." "The air is warmer." The soldier led them into a cave carved by ancient fire. Inside, the stone walls glowed faintly with heat from deep below. The frost melted from their clothes, and for the first time in days, the air did not bite their skin. He set the mother down gently on the warm ground. Covering her with blankets, her chest rose stronger now, her lips gaining a touch of color. The girl pressed against her mother, tears streaming down her face, this time from joy. The soldier sat near the entrance, his rifle resting across his knees. His body ached, his wounds burned, but his eyes softened as he watched them. The girl looked at him, her voice trembling but filled with gratitude. "You did it. You saved her." He shook his head slowly, his voice low. "No, you saved her with your courage, with your faith." The girl smiled weakly, her small hand reaching out to him. "No, human. You are our fire in the cold." The silence of the cave wrapped around them, broken only by the faint drip of water and the mother's steady breathing. For the first time, hope lived in the frozen world. The soldier leaned back against the stone, his eyes closing for a brief moment of rest. He knew danger would return, patrols would search again. The war outside was not done, but here in this hidden warmth, life had won one small victory. The girl curled beside her mother, holding her close, her eyes heavy with sleep but still glowing with trust. Her last whisper before drifting into dreams was soft and certain. "We are safe now." The soldier listened, his chest heavy, his lips pressing into a faint, rare smile. He whispered into the shadows, his voice steady. "You are safe, no one will take you. Not while I breathe." The storm raged outside, the hunters prowled the ice. The world stayed cruel, but inside the cave, a fire burned stronger than any winter. The bond between human and alien had been forged, not by blood, not by orders, but by choice. And in the endless cold, that choice was the greatest warmth of all.